I discovered her on a Tuesday night while scrolling through Facebook in bed. The algorithm had suggested a post from someone I didn't know, tagged by a mutual friend. A teenage girl sat at a piano recital, hands poised over keys, smile bright and proud. Her name was Lila Quinn. Something about her face stopped my breath. Those eyes, that distinctive gray-blue shade Damon's mother always bragged ran in their family, stared back at me through the screen. I clicked on her profile with trembling fingers. Comments from years back filled the page, casual mentions that made my stomach turn. One from 5 years ago read, "So proud of our little Lila. She's got your talent, Damon." My husband's name, right there. The girl was 14 years old now. I scrolled to the first photo on her page, posted exactly 15 years ago. The same year Damon and I got married. Rain started hitting my bedroom window as I stared at that screen, my entire world cracking silently in half. Damon slept beside me, peaceful and oblivious. I wanted to shake him awake and demand answers, but something deeper told me to wait, to gather proof before confronting the lie. Morning arrived with cruel normalcy. Damon kissed my forehead like always, his routine gesture of affection that suddenly felt like theater. He smelled like cedar and expensive cologne, the same scent I'd loved for 15 years. Over breakfast, he talked excitedly about our upcoming vow renewal ceremony, joking that we'd finally get our second first kiss. His words felt hollow now, each syllable landing like stones in my chest. I smiled back anyway, my hand shaking slightly as I placed his coffee cup down. He didn't notice. He never noticed much about me anymore, too absorbed in his surgical practice and endless conferences. That night, after he fell asleep, I crept into his study. The room smelled like old books and secrets. Behind a medical journal on the bottom shelf, I found a picture frame turned face down. My pulse hammered as I lifted it. Inside was a photo of tiny Lila, maybe 3 years old, sitting on Damon's lap. Both of them laughing. I turned the frame over with numb fingers. Faded blue ink on the back read, "For my first little secret, love always, Damon." First. That word echoed in my head all night. 3 days of searching led me to her mother. Lila Quinn, a name buried in Damon's old research files from a project that ended 16 years ago. She'd vanished from his professional circle after that collaboration finished. Now she lived just 30 miles away, working as a music teacher, raising her daughter alone. I found her through the school's website and attended one of her student recitals without announcing myself. When she saw me standing in the back of the auditorium, her face went white. We didn't speak until everyone else had left, meeting in the empty parking lot under fluorescent lights. "You don't have to deny it," I said quietly, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "She has his eyes." Tears filled Elaine's immediately. Her hands twisted together nervously. "He promised me he'd tell you eventually," she whispered. "He said the truth would destroy you." I looked at this woman who'd hidden my husband's child for 14 years. "Then let's make sure he's right," I replied. Elaine stared at me, confused and frightened. But I'd already started planning. The vow renewal was in 6 weeks. Perfect timing. Damon had been planning our 15th anniversary vow renewal at Fairmont Gardens for months. He'd invited everyone important in our lives, colleagues from the hospital, investors in his medical ventures, board members from the foundation he chaired. He told me repeatedly he wanted to honor our love in front of everyone who mattered. The irony burned. I told him I'd prepare a special surprise for the ceremony, something unforgettable. His face lit up with genuine excitement. He had no idea the storm I was quietly gathering. That evening, I messaged Elaine through a burner email account I'd created. My words were careful, measured. "You don't have to come if you're not ready. But your daughter deserves to know who her father really is. She deserves to see the kind of man he pretends to be versus who he actually is." I hit send and waited. 20 minutes later, her response appeared on my screen. Just 3 words, but they changed everything. "We'll be there." I closed my laptop and looked at my reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back looked different already, harder somehow. Ready. 1 week before the ceremony, Damon left his laptop open while taking a business call in his study. The man who never forgot passwords had grown careless, comfortable in his deception. I sat down at his desk and clicked into his email. My hands stayed steady as folders opened, revealing years of lies. Hotel receipts from California trips he'd claimed were medical conferences. Flight bookings every few months to cities where Elaine and Lila lived. Then I found the email thread that made my blood run cold. Subject line: Lila's tuition. Keep my name out of this. Messages between him and Elaine dating back years, discussing money, logistics, careful coordination to keep his double life hidden. He'd lied for over a decade, not from fear or shame, but from convenience. Because keeping me in the dark was easier than facing consequences. I copied everything to a hidden flash drive, my movements automatic and precise. When I finished, I looked at my reflection in his office window. The calm, composed version of myself stared back. You wanted vows, Damon. I whispered to that reflection. You'll get them. Every single one you broke, spoken aloud. 3 days before the ceremony, Damon's phone lit up on the kitchen counter while he showered upstairs. The name on the screen froze me. Lila Q. My pulse slowed instead of racing. Something cold and calculating settled over me. I answered without hesitation. Daddy. Her voice was small, nervous, achingly polite. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you at work. She stopped breathing when she heard me instead of him. The silence stretched between us like a wire. Who is this? She finally whispered. Someone who's about to change your life, I said quietly, then ended the call. I set the phone back exactly where it had been. When Damon emerged minutes later, towel wrapped around his waist, hair dripping, I was calmly chopping vegetables for dinner. Someone called for you, I said conversationally. Young voice. Sounded nervous. He froze mid-step, water pooling at his feet. What did they say? His voice had changed, tighter now. Hung up before I could ask. I lied smoothly. Wrong number, probably. But I watched his hands shake slightly as he picked up his phone and checked his call log. That evening, he poured wine and practiced his vows in our living room. Every word dripped with false sincerity, rehearsed like lines from a script he'd memorized. You've been my anchor, my peace, my home, he declared to our empty room. I raised my glass from the doorway. To honesty, I said. He laughed, completely missing the blade hidden in those words. But then his hand trembled, and red wine spilled across his white shirt cuff. For just a moment, his mask cracked. I saw fear flicker behind his confident smile. I'll change, he muttered, heading upstairs. The moment he disappeared, I grabbed his phone from the coffee table. The call log still showed Lila Q, 2 minutes and 37 seconds. I took a photo of the screen with my own phone, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. Upstairs, I heard water running as he tried to scrub the wine stain from his shirt. Some stains, I thought, don't come out no matter how hard you try. The truth was about to permanently mark everything he'd built on lies. The next morning, a car I didn't recognize pulled into our driveway. Through the kitchen window, I watched Elaine step out, hands trembling visibly even from a distance. Lila emerged from the passenger side, clutching a music school brochure against her chest. The girl looked nervous, confused. Elaine clearly hadn't told her daughter why they were really here. I met them at the front door before Damon returned from his morning run. Lila looked up at me with those devastating gray-blue eyes and smiled uncertainly. Mrs. Astor, she said softly, your house is really beautiful. My throat tightened. She was so polite, so innocent in all this. Thank you, sweetheart, I managed to say. It's built on secrets. The words came out before I could stop them. Elaine shot me a warning look, but Lila just seemed confused. From the corner of my eye, I saw Damon's car turning onto our street, returning early from his run. He's coming, Elaine whispered urgently. I know, I replied calmly. That's the point. We stood there, the three of us, waiting for the moment everything would begin to unravel. Damon walked through the door, workout clothes damp with sweat, smile fixed in place. The moment he registered Elaine standing in our foyer, Every drop of color drained from his face. His eyes darted to Lila, then back to me. His mouth opened, but no words emerged. I stepped between them with deliberate calm. "Relax," I said. "No scenes today. Save it for tomorrow's ceremony." He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Sienna, what is this?" His voice cracked. I gestured to our guests. "Just clearing up some confusion before we renew our vows." "Seems appropriate, doesn't it?" Lila looked between all of us, beginning to understand something was wrong. "Mom," she asked quietly. "What's happening?" Damon finally found his voice. "You told her," he demanded, glaring at Elaine.
"No," Elaine whispered.
She found us herself. I pulled a sealed envelope from my pocket and handed it to Damon. "My vows," I said sweetly. "Don't read them until tomorrow during the ceremony." Inside wasn't paper. It was printed copies of his email chain with Elaine, going back years. His hands shook as he felt the weight of the envelope. He didn't sleep that night. I heard him pacing the hallway, muttering to himself, typing frantic messages on his laptop at 3 a.m. When dawn finally broke through our curtains, he turned to face me in bed. "You can't humiliate me, Sienna," he said. "You'll ruin everything we've built together." I sat up slowly, wrapped my robe tighter. "Everything you built was already ruined," I replied. "I'm just turning on the lights so everyone can see." He grabbed my arm, not hard but desperate. I met his eyes, without flinching, until he released me. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "I'll finally tell the truth in front of everyone who's believed your lies for years." He stared at me like he'd never really seen me before. When I walked out of the bedroom, I heard the unmistakable click of a suitcase latch from his closet. For a moment, I wondered if he'd run. But cowards rarely ran when they still thought they could talk their way out. And Damon had always believed his charm could fix anything. Tomorrow, he'd learn otherwise. The morning of our vow renewal felt surreal. Our house smelled like white roses and burnt toast from Damon's nervous attempt at breakfast. He was all surface charm and barely concealed panic, rehearsing his speech in the bathroom mirror like an actor preparing for the performance of his life. "Sienna," he said carefully over coffee, "let's just make today about us. No drama. Please." He said it the way guilty men always did, not asking for forgiveness, but for delay. I smiled into my cup. "Of course, Damon. Today's about truth." The word truth made him flinch, but he didn't catch the full meaning. He never did. He thought control meant volume, speaking loudest in every room. But real power whispered. At 9 a.m, my stylist arrived to do my hair and makeup. As she worked, I watched rain tap gently against the window like the sky itself was nervous. My reflection didn't look like a betrayed woman preparing for revenge. It looked like a verdict waiting to be read. When I finally stepped into my white dress, I saw Damon's phone lighting up on the dresser. One missed call. Elaine Q. I didn't touch it. The universe had already set everything in motion. The church smelled like lilies and expensive perfume. Every seat filled with polished friends and carefully maintained professional relationships. People who believed in the perfect image Damon and I had cultivated together over 15 years. Damon stood near the altar looking radiant in his tailored suit, grin too wide, handshakes too enthusiastic. Guilt often looked like charisma when it was terrified. As I walked down the aisle, white dress trailing behind me, I saw his eyes soften with relief. He thought my silence meant surrender, that I decided to preserve our public image. Behind him, just 2 rows from the front, Elaine and Lila sat quietly, uninvited officially but perfectly timed. Lila's hair caught the light streaming through stained glass windows, that distinctive gold-brown shade identical to Damon's. If anyone looked closely enough, they wouldn't need me to say anything. The resemblance was undeniable. Damon's best friend Warren leaned over and whispered something that made all color drain from Damon's face. Warren had noticed. His eyes had found Lila in the crowd, then snapped back to Damon with dawning horror. The minister asked Damon to speak first. His voice was steady, rehearsed, dripping with unintentional irony. "Sienna, You've taught me love that endures, forgiveness that heals, and faith that never breaks. Each word was theft, stolen from the trust he'd destroyed years ago. My turn came next. I took a slow breath, feeling my heart pound against silk and secrets. Damon, I began softly. I once believed love meant protecting someone's image. Today, I know it means protecting your own soul first. The crowd murmured, that subtle electric shift when people sensed a storm approaching. I reached behind me. My maid of honor handed me the envelope, the same one I'd given Damon last night. Inside your jacket, I said clearly, you'll find the vows you brought. You should read them too. He hesitated, hand shaking as he pulled the envelope from his pocket. His face went completely white as printed emails slid into the light, visible to everyone in the front rows. Gasps rippled through the church like wind through dry leaves. Elaine rose slowly from her seat, Lila's hand gripped tightly in hers. The moment of truth had finally arrived. For one perfect moment, everything was absolutely still. Then chaos erupted. Whispers turned to shocked exclamations. Cameras raised. Someone gasped loudly. Damon? A voice called from behind me, confused and horrified. Who is that child? Another person asked. Damon's mouth moved, but no sound came out. He looked like a man drowning on dry land. Elaine stepped forward, trembling but determined. I never wanted it to happen like this, she said, voice shaking. She just wanted to know her father. Lila's voice cut through the noise, small but piercing. You told me Mom was wrong, that she imagined everything. The entire congregation turned toward Damon as one. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. While I stayed faithful for 15 years, I said calmly, Damon stayed very busy. But secrets have their own calendars, and this one just reached its expiration date. Lila suddenly pulled something from her pocket. A gold pendant necklace, delicate and unmistakable. Identical to the one Damon had given me 12 years ago for our anniversary. He sent me this last year, she whispered. For my birthday. The minister tried desperately to regain order, but the ceremony had dissolved completely into disbelief and scandal. Damon lunged for the microphone. It's not what it looks like, he shouted. I stepped forward, heels steady on marble floors. Then by all means, explain which part isn't what it looks like. The emails you wrote? The necklace you gave her? Your daughter you've been hiding? He spun toward Elaine, rage mixing with desperation in his expression. You ruined me, he hissed. No, Damon, I said, my voice firm but almost tender. You ruined yourself years ago. I just stopped sweeping the pieces under expensive rugs. For the first time in 20 years together, he had absolutely nothing to say. Lila started crying, overwhelmed by the attention and chaos. I went to her immediately, kneeling in my white dress, and gently took her hand. You're not a mistake, I whispered so only she could hear. You're proof that truth always surfaces eventually. Then I stood, pulled off my wedding ring, and placed it carefully on the altar. Vows renewed, I said softly, but this time with myself. From the doorway, 2 reporters entered. Warren had invited them, sending me emails that morning. The church emptied like a building on fire. Guests stumbled out in various states of disbelief, whispering urgently to each other, cameras flashing continuously. But I remained perfectly still at the altar. Damon stood frozen in the center aisle, his carefully constructed reputation bleeding out faster than his words could possibly patch it. Sienna, please, he stammered desperately. We can fix this somehow. The reporters advanced with microphones ready. Warren stood with arms crossed, making no move to stop them. You told everyone she was crazy, Warren muttered to Damon. Turns out she was the only sane person here. I walked past Damon slowly, deliberately, like leaving a grave I'd finally finished digging. Fix it, I said softly. You built this entire house of lies, Damon. I just opened all the windows. Outside, the air felt cool and heavy with approaching rain. Behind me, I heard the first camera shutter click. The scandal had officially begun its public life. As I stepped into the waiting car, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Mrs. Astor, my name is Randall Pierce. I represent Lila Quinn. We need to talk urgently. I smiled and started the engine. Randall Pierce looked exactly like someone who'd spent years cleaning up other people's disasters. Sharp suit, tired but intelligent eyes, unshakable professional calm. We met 2 days later at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Mrs. Astor, Elaine wants peace, he began carefully, setting his briefcase on the table. For her daughter's sake primarily.
Peace.
I asked. Your client hid a child for 14 years. Your husband hid her, he corrected gently. Elaine just tried to survive the situation he created. His tone actually disarmed me. He slid a thick file across the table. Inside were bank transfer records spanning years. Damon's secret support payments, all carefully disguised through his restaurant investment accounts. He'd been funding Lila's private school tuition, summer camps, even Elaine's mortgage payments. This proves he lied to everyone, I said quietly, scanning the documents. Yes, Randall replied. And there's more. He forged your signature multiple times to access joint assets for these transfers. The cafe's background noise seemed to fade. Why are you showing me this? Because Elaine's ready to testify against him. She's done protecting someone who never protected her. At the bottom of one document, I saw it. My signature in blue ink. Forged.
Perfect.
2 weeks later, I stood inside a marble courtroom that smelled like polished wood and decades of other people's lies being exposed. Damon sat across the aisle looking pale and hollow, pretending control, while his lawyer whispered constant damage control strategies. Elaine sat directly behind me with Lila, both silent but present. When the judge entered, the entire room seemed to lose oxygen. Mrs. Astor, the judge said formally, you're seeking full restitution of marital assets and damages for fraud? I'm seeking truth, Your Honor, I said clearly. Money was never the real currency in this marriage. Trust was. Damon's lawyer objected immediately, as expected, but the documents Randall had provided were absolutely airtight. Every forged signature, every hidden transfer, every secret account laid completely bare under the soft mechanical click of the courtroom projector. When Damon finally spoke, his voice cracked audibly. She's doing this to destroy me publicly. No, I said calmly, meeting his eyes. You destroyed yourself. I'm just recording it accurately for the first time. As I left the witness stand, Lila handed me something. A torn photograph of Damon holding her as a baby. On the back, his handwriting read, My second chance at family. The trial went viral before the verdict even came. Headlines flooded every news outlet and social media platform. Businessman's secret daughter exposed at vow renewal. The double life of Damon Astor. For 15 years, I'd been the quiet, composed, perfectly supportive wife. Now I was the woman who'd shattered the illusion of perfection. But the messages flooding my inbox weren't judgment. They were gratitude from strangers. You gave me courage to walk away from my own situation. I saw myself in your story and realized I'm not alone. Every confession from someone I'd never met stitched a small part of me back together. Meanwhile, Damon's business empire crumbled spectacularly. Investors fled immediately. Sponsors pulled contracts. His board replaced him within a month. He issued a public apology, scripted and trembling, far too late to matter. The video showed him breaking down on camera, finally experiencing consequences. A week after that broadcast, an envelope arrived at my door. Inside was a check for half his remaining assets, and signed, but clipped to a handwritten note. You win this round. But I never stopped fighting. I burned both immediately. Rain fell again the day the verdict was announced. The courtroom buzzed with quiet satisfaction as the judge ruled completely in my favor. Full restitution, asset transfer, and a required public statement acknowledging fraud. Damon didn't look at me as they read the judgment. He looked at Lila instead, his daughter, his undoing, his mirror. I'm sorry, he whispered to her. For once, I actually believed him. But belief and forgiveness weren't the same thing. Outside, Cameras flashed like lightning. A reporter shouted over the crowd, "Mrs. Astor, what would you say to other women living a lie?" I paused on the courthouse steps, rain running down my face like cleansing water. "Don't waste years waiting for someone else's truth," I said directly into the cameras. "Build your own." Then I walked away with no ring, no regrets, just the sound of thunder behind me and unexpected peace ahead. As I reached my car, Randall texted one final time. "Elaine's leaving the country with Lila next week. She wanted me to tell you, thank you for setting them free." I sat in my car and cried with relief. The mansion felt different after everything ended. Every echo was sharper, every room somehow colder despite unchanged heating. The grand staircase where we'd taken our favorite anniversary photos now looked like a monument to everything fake. I hadn't moved out yet. Part of me wanted to experience what silence sounded like when all the lies were finally gone. One evening, I opened Damon's old study, the room he used to keep locked. The air smelled like expensive bourbon and burned ambition. In the bottom desk drawer, I found a sealed envelope labeled in his precise handwriting. "In case you ever find out." Inside was a letter written months ago. "Sienna, I never meant for her to exist behind your back. I wanted to tell you every year, but I kept losing courage. I built my empire on fear, not love. You were the only real thing." For one brief moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I noticed something else. At the bottom of the letter was a line of numbers, coordinates, and a postscript in different ink, added more recently. "Go there if you want the complete truth." The coordinates led to a small lake house 2 hours north of the city. Remote, quiet, surrounded by pine trees. I drove there alone through melting snow, heart pulsing with old questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. When I arrived, the place looked abandoned from outside. But inside, everything was pristine, as if someone had been living there secretly and recently. Photos lined every wall. Lila as a baby, as a toddler, as a student. Damon appeared in every single frame, smiling genuinely in ways I rarely saw at home. Then I found a separate box labeled for Sienna in his handwriting. Inside were uncashed checks made out to me, birthday cards addressed to me, all marked return to sender. He'd tried to write, to confess, and never sent them. He wanted to control even his guilt. I whispered to the empty house. Even his conscience had rules and schedules. At the bottom of the box was one photograph that didn't fit the pattern. Damon stood with a young boy, maybe 10 years old. On the back, his handwriting read, "Not mine biologically, but I raised him like he was." Another secret. Another hidden life. The boy's name was Colt Emerson, according to records I found hidden beneath a loose floorboard. He wasn't Damon's biological child. He was Damon's late brother's son, orphaned young. Damon had been paying for his education completely in secret for years. It was possibly the first truly selfless thing I'd ever discovered about him. And somehow, it broke me more than his betrayal ever had. Because now I had to face an uncomfortable truth. He wasn't simply a monster. He was a complicated man who kept building cages around others and himself until he couldn't tell the difference between protection and prison. That night, I wrote my own letter back to him. "You wanted to be remembered for your empire, Damon. I'll remember you for your secrets instead, both the cruel ones and the surprisingly kind ones." I sealed it and left it on the lake house table. As I drove away, my phone buzzed. Randall calling. "Sienna, I need to tell you something. Damon's been found unconscious. He's in the hospital. They're saying it might be serious." I gripped the steering wheel and turned the car around. He looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. The man who once dominated boardrooms now lay quiet beneath white sheets, connected to machines that hummed like distant thunder. When I entered, his eyes opened slowly. "You came," he whispered, genuinely surprised. "You asked?" I replied simply. There was no hate left between us anymore. Just exhaustion and too much time spent in lies. "Did you find the lake house?" he asked weakly. "I did." "Then you know everything now." He coughed, reaching shakily for something on the nightstand. "The wedding ring." The same one he'd given me 15 years ago. "You were always the only truth I ever had," he said. "I'm sorry, I didn't deserve you." I didn't answer immediately. Sometimes silence was the only language love had left when words had been used up completely. A week later, I received a certified letter from his estate lawyer. The entire lake property and a substantial trust fund in Lila's name had been left to me to manage. One final act of confession disguised as generosity. A year later, I returned to that lake house one last time. The air smelled like cedar and something that felt almost like forgiveness. Elaine had brought Lila back to visit, both of them older, calmer, healing. We talked for hours on the porch. About Damon, about impossible choices, about the strange path to freedom. When they left, I walked alone to the edge of the dock and stared out at the perfectly still water. In its mirror-like reflection, I saw the woman I'd finally become. Not a victim, not a wife, not even an avenger. Just a survivor who finally understood what peace actually felt like. I took off the wedding ring I'd been keeping in my pocket and dropped it into the lake. For every truth that drowned before it could be spoken, I said softly to the ripples. As the water settled back to stillness, I smiled genuinely for the first time in what felt like years. Not because I'd won some battle or proven something to anyone, but because I was finally completely free. Free from lies, from performance, from being someone else's secret. Just free. And that was enough. When it was over, he tried to fix the image, to patch what the truth had torn apart. But reputations don't heal in silence. And love doesn't survive lies. The night I walked away, he stood there still wearing the ring I'd already taken off. For years, he built a life on secrets. I built mine on peace. And that's the real difference between us. He was fighting to save what was fake, while I was learning to live in what was real. So when people ask if I regret exposing him that day, I just smile because the truth doesn't destroy people, it only destroys the ones who built their lives on lies. My name is Sienna Astor, and this was how I finally set myself free. If you were moved by my story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the box on your screen to hear the next story waiting for you sometimes. The next story is even closer than you think. Thanks for watching.